Studies have shown that sweat can contain these endocrine disruptors, BPA, phthalates, even heavy metals. We're sweating these things out. Pooping is actually the #1 detox tool. Anyone who comes to me who says, I want to take a liver supplement, I ask them, how many times do you poop a day? The root cause of a lot of the harmful effects we observe with plastic and endocrine disruptors, the root is the mitochondria.
I want to talk about microplastics in the brain.
People with dementia had more microplastic in their brain.
Dr. Vivian Chen is a UK-trained medical doctor with 15 years of clinical experience in internal medicine and family practice. Now based in California, Dr. Chen traded her prescription pad for a deeper mission, helping people uncover and address the root causes of their health struggles, from mitochondrial dysfunction to environmental toxicity. Today, Dr. Chen is dedicated to empowering others to reduce their toxic load, support cellular health, and truly thrive. We've got a serious issue going on right now in our society, and it's growing by the day, and most people have no idea about it. Microplastics, nanoplastics, everywhere the scientists are looking, they're finding the accumulation of these things in our tissues, everywhere in the body that scientists are looking. And most startling, and why I wanted to have you here today, is that it's now affirmed that this is affecting human body fat and metabolism and functioning in this category of obesogens, right? These compounds that are altering the way that our bodies utilize energy. And so can you start off by talking a little bit about how plastics are impacting human health overall, and also specifically how it's affecting our body fat?
Right. Where do I start? Well, first of all, plastics are made up of something like 10,000 different chemicals. So 10,000 different chemicals are used to make plastic. 2/3 of them have never been tested for safety. And around 2,000 are actually potentially known to be toxic. And yet they're ubiquitous, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And the Endocrine Society estimated that in 2018, the cost of these toxic chemicals from plastic to human health was $250 billion. So $250 billion in healthcare costs. That was in 2018. How much is it now?
Right.
We have studies showing that the amount of plastic in our bodies have increased. So yeah, it's a big problem, and I'm so happy you are bringing it to light, because I think more people need to know about it. And going back to the issue of weight, which you mentioned, a lot of people are feeling bad. They're feeling guilty. People think they're lazy, right? When they can't lose the weight, they're doing everything right. But they're actually swimming against this toxic soup of chemicals that are literally holding back the metabolism, changing the way fat cells are storing fat, changing the way we burn glucose, we burn fat, and all of that then can contribute to weight gain.
We were just talking about this yesterday, and I was kicking some studies back and forth with you. And what we're going to do, and we'll put this up for everybody to see, and we're going to be referencing this throughout this episode, but this was published in Frontiers in Endocrinology recently. And also this was highlighted by the NIH. They did a big analysis on this. So like our top tier government agencies and also top tier scientific publications, these studies are affirming that, as you mentioned, and that was a key word, microplastics are ubiquitous. They're everywhere, and we really can't escape them at this point. Even the most remote places on Earth, these microplastics are showing up primarily through inhalation. We're inhaling these microplastics and nanoplastics as this kind of biodegradation. And also the second biggest introduction to the human body is through plastic water bottles, which we've talked about before. And I want to talk more about this, because on this episode, we're going to be talking about what's happening with our bodies, but also some solutions. So I don't want people to get too nervous, but we have to talk about this.
Yes.
Because it's changing the way that our bodies function. Yep. And so specifically, let's dig in a little bit more on what's happening with our cells, because in fact, these researchers are finding that the microplastics are specifically accumulating in the mitochondria of our cells.
Correct. Yeah. So if you zoom in to the kind of the root cause of a lot of the harmful effects we observe with plastic and endocrine disruptors, the root is the mitochondria. because that's actually where a lot of hormones are made, right? So our sex hormones, estrogen, is made in the mitochondria. So if your mitochondria is not functioning, first of all, let's backtrack a little bit. What are mitochondria? So some people might not even know that. So mitochondria are kind of like the powerhouses inside of our cells. So if you imagine one of those toy cars, the remote control cars, they have batteries inside, right? When the battery starts diminishing, that car starts to run slower and slower, and eventually it stops. When your mitochondria is not functioning, it's like that car with diminishing battery. It cannot run as fast. It cannot work as well. So if it's your brain cell, you cannot think as quickly and cannot remember. So, some people have brain fog. If it's in your liver, you might have impaired glucose metabolism or high cholesterol. So mitochondria is in every single cell of our body apart from red blood cells. They kind of power every single function in our body. So if your mitochondria is impaired, then it can literally impact every single function in your body.
It's bonkers. And I remember and this is probably same for you, but in college, when we would study the cell and we see this little diagram, but we were kind of misinformed in a way that there's like one mitochondria in the cell, right? Now we know that there's hundreds or maybe even upwards of thousands potentially in these little energy power plants.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of the chronic diseases that we're seeing on the rise, so for example, insulin resistance, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, both are kind of going on this exponential trajectory, right? So we have now a third of Americans with non-alcoholic liver disease. So that's fatty liver, so fat depositing in the liver cells, affecting the function of your liver. And it's associated with insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. In 1988, only 16% of Americans had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now we have 30%, so it's gone up by 100%. Same with prediabetes, diabetes, that's now affecting 50% of Americans. We have, I think, something like 70% of Americans overweight and obese. All of these diseases, it's kind of like a manifestation of what's going on at the mitochondrial level, in my opinion.
You said something so powerful that I don't want to glance over. You mentioned how these plastics aren't just plastic, right? And it isn't just a fossil fuel. There are thousands of other chemicals used as plasticizers and stabilizers and coloring agents and all these things to make plastics do what they do.
Yeah.
And so when we think about something like BPA, right? Some people might think that is plastic. That's a plasticizer. And that's just one of the many chemicals that, again, these are holding up shop and accumulating even in our mitochondria.
Yeah.
And so referencing back to that study that I mentioned, the researchers noted that microplastics induce oxidative stress, number one. So we're talking about damage to the cell, damage to the mitochondria. They also know that it alters energy and fatty acid metabolism because our mitochondria are the end destination for when we think about, quote, fat burning.
Yeah.
It's the mitochondria that are doing that end job.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And what's so interesting is that last year, a study came out of my alma mater, UCL. So that's where I went to medical school in London. Research was done by a researcher called Dr. Glenn Jeffries. So he's a photobiomodulation researcher, a red light therapy researcher. And he was looking at how red light therapy could impact blood sugar. And red light therapy, for those who don't know, is one of those modalities that can improve our mitochondrial function. So what he did was he recruited 30 healthy volunteers. He divided them into two groups. So one group drank 75 grams of glucose diluted in water. And then the other group drank the same drink, 75 grams of glucose, but 45 minutes before they drank that drink, they had 15 minutes of red light therapy applied to their back. The group that drank the glucose, who received the light, had 27% lower glucose spike. So what does that tell you? It means that this red light therapy is activating and helping the mitochondria process that sugar better, and therefore the blood sugar level after the drink was 27% lower.
That's phenomenal. That's so powerful. Listen, what we're talking about here today is beyond the superficial, right? Because so many of our chronic disease epidemics, we know that food has a big role in this. We know that, absolutely. Yeah. But it's not just the food itself and the nature of these ultra-processed foods. It's all the other chemical conglomerates coming along with it. So specifically, as noted by these researchers, these microplastics and nanoplastics, which the average person is now coming in contact with. I'm talking about consuming via their breath or through water consumption, food consumption, milligrams a day. Whereas a lot of these other chemical contaminants are, we're talking about nano levels and micro levels. And so just the sheer amount that we're taking in. But I want to point this out. Yes, we need to move. Yes, we need to eat clean food. But also, there are things about us that go beyond the superficial, which is like light. We're a conglomeration ourselves of these biophotons. Yeah. We seem like this very solid thing, but even me being able to see you is a big function of light.
100%.
And so our bodies respond to light. It is something we evolved with. And we have these photoreceptors throughout our entire body, not just our eyes, that are picking up data and informing our liver, our kidneys, our heart, and generating these responses. So utilizing light, specifically red light, and there's so much science about this now, to know that red light can impact our blood sugar is a game changer. And people need to know this.
Yes. And it's not just red light, right? You don't have to go out there and buy a fancy device if you can't afford one. Go out into the sunlight. There's actually a study showing that what they did was they correlated people's blood sugar and their metabolic health with the amount of sunlight in the environment. And they showed that on days where there was more sunshine and they were exposed to more sunshine, they had better blood sugar control.
Be more human. That's one of the big takeaways from today.
Yeah, so I actually see light as a nutrient. Yeah. It's not officially classified as a nutrient, but it just informs so much of our biology that it is really, really important. And most of us, Americans spend 93% of the time indoors. So we're really deficient in this very important nutrient.
That's so crazy. And that devolution of staying away from the sun and natural light has just been in the last few decades.
Right.
So this is a huge human experiment that we don't know that we're doing.
Right. So compound that with the microplastics, the nanoplastics, the endocrine disruptors that are damaging the mitochondria, and then you're not actually providing the solutions to help your mitochondria either, right? So that's kind of like a double whammy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to reference back to this once more, but this was published again in Frontiers in Endocrinology. And again, to cite directly from the study, accumulation of microplastics in the liver and kidneys has also been shown to boost the growth and accumulation of fat cells and disrupt energy balance, which ultimately can affect our body weight. So again, this is going beyond calories in, calories out. We're changing the way that our metabolism is working overall with our constant exposure to these microplastics. And so what I want to do today is, number one, for everybody to understand the sense of urgency with this, because, and we'll flash these up on the screen, we've got studies affirming that microplastics are now being found in the human heart, testicles, and also we're going to talk about a master organ in the body in just a moment. But we're going to talk about what we can do about this to minimize our exposure. So number one, I want to talk about our sense of urgency. And we've got to do something about this because this is not a joke. And that study that I referenced in the New England Journal of Medicine for cardiac tissue and the arterial plaque buildup being so rich in microplastics was found to significantly increase the risk of cardiovascular issues, heart attack, stroke.
Yeah.
And so keep this in mind. But I want to talk about microplastics in the brain. Now, let's talk a little bit about that.
That's the latest finding, right? That's shocking. So this is the most recent study that found that we have around a teaspoon worth of plastic in our brain. They looked at 45 post-mortem samples of brain tissue. And what they found was that every single sample contained microplastic, and the amount increased by 50% between 2016 and 2024. So we're exposed to exponentially more in the environment. We're absorbing it, and it's getting into our bodies, and it's depositing in our major organs. Now, a lot of scientists will argue we don't know what that means, right? This is what, when I first started talking about this, 8-9 years ago, this is what doctors and scientists will say. We don't know what it means. It might be benign. Well, it's not benign, right? Because what they found was, now this is an association, but people with dementia had more microplastic in their brain. So it's a correlation. We don't know if it's causative, but we have other studies showing the presence of microplastic or nanoplastic causes inflammatory markers to go up.
Yeah. And we know that has all manner of ramifications.
Right.
Whether
inflammation is the basis of chronic diseases. It impacts our mitochondria. It damages our mitochondria. So that's one of the mechanisms. Inflammation causes weight gain. Inflammation's been linked to increased heart disease risk, increased risk of diabetes, Alzheimer's, you name it. Inflammation is bad news, and we don't want that. And it's been shown in petri dish studies, animal studies, that presence of microplastic and nanoplastics cause inflammation. And that study that you just talked about from the New England Journal of Medicine, can we talk about that now?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like this is really relevant.
Yeah.
So they actually looked at around 200 samples of artery biopsies from people undergoing surgery to remove plaque from the arteries. So this is a major artery in your neck called carotid artery. And when they analyzed the samples, they found microplastic and nanoplastics in 50% of the samples. And they followed up these people for 3 years. Those with microplastic and nanoplastics had a 4.5 times increased risk of heart disease, strokes, and death from any cause. So I think this is a landmark study, right? It's so important because it's the first time it's been shown in humans that microplastic is linked to increased risks of diseases. Previous to this, we've had smaller studies that show people with more microplastic in their poop had an increased risk of inflammatory bowel disease. So that's things like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. So these are inflammatory conditions in the gut where you have bloody diarrhea, severe abdominal cramps, and you might need surgery. It's very serious conditions.
This is, again, I really hope that this is a revelation for everybody. You just mentioned this, that, for years, and even this getting introduced into our environment, being led or misled to believe that these things were inert, they're not going to do any harm. It's just this new innovation. We're seeing the ramifications. We're seeing the downstream effects because our entire world, we're surrounded by plastic now. Yeah. And it is, again, in the air that we breathe. We can't really escape it. Our food supply, our water supply. And we know that this is causing harm to our health, right? So the accumulation in our brains, in our heart, in our reproductive organs.
Oh, yeah.
The list goes on and on. Actually, I'm going to mention this because in that analysis from Frontiers in Endocrinology, they stated that, and again, it's difficult to track these things in humans, right? We know that we're finding microplastics in the placenta, for example. Yeah. But being able to see this firsthand, they noted specific animal studies finding that maternal exposure to microplastics altered energy and lipid metabolism in the offspring of subsequent generations. It's changing how our kids are able to metabolize food, how they're able to metabolize fat in negative ways.
Right. That's because if you expose the developing fetus to obesogens. So these chemicals we just talked about that alter our metabolism and increase our propensity to weight gain. During critical windows, when that baby's developing, you can actually switch on and off genes. So one of the genes these chemicals can switch on is PPAR gamma. So this is a master regulator of fat metabolism. And if you expose these cells that are developing during critical windows to something like BPA, phthalates, which can switch on and off this gene, that cell can now become, from stem cell to fat cell. So you can change the course of development of that cell, and the cell will actually store more fat as well and become bigger.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So if we want to look at this again in a superficial way, the accumulation of these plastics in our brain, in our heart, in our reproductive organs, in our skin, the list goes on and on. We are plasticizing ourselves as a species. We're becoming walking, talking Barbie and Ken dolls. It's not an accident that this is a conspiracy. Barbie came out recently. No, in reality, again, the human body, we're very resilient. That's the point I want to make. We're very resilient. And even in the face of this issue, life finds a way. And so we're going to make adaptations.
Yes.
And the question is, are we going to make these for the betterment of humanity or not? And part of that adaptation is our intelligence to be able to choose what do we do proactively in our lives as human beings, as a world family, to create more resilience in the face of this, again, ubiquitous exposure. How can we help our bodies to, number one, we want to reduce our exposure. And number two, I want to talk about how we can potentially help get these things out of our bodies. So let's start with reducing our exposure. What do we need to do?
Yeah. So, the plastic most commonly found in these tissues is polyethylene. What's polyethylene? If you take your plastic water bottle and you look at the number on the bottom in the triangle, it's usually 1 or 2. So 2 and 4, the numbers 2 and 4 are polyethylene. So that's your usually your milk cartons, your food packaging, your Ziploc bags. So that's how it's exposed, right? How we're exposed, rather. It's through food packaging. What's the number one source of exposure, in my opinion, is plastic bottled water, right? Studies have shown that a liter of plastic bottled water contained 250,000 particles of micro and nanoplastic. And that's not counting the amount of endocrine disruptors it may contain, right? Phthalates, BPA that we just talked about.
That is scary pants.
And don't be fooled by BPA free.
Right.
BPA free just means that they've substituted BPA with an alternative, BPF, BPS, and studies have shown that they're just as harmful.
Exactly. And again, it might be well-intentioned even from a brand trying to be BPA free, but if you don't really understand the science and dig a little bit deeper, you find out that for the plastic bottle to be made into that plastic bottle, it has to have these plasticizer chemicals to help to mold it and make it into what it is. And that is going to biodegrade, photodegrade. It's going to break down into that water. Water is the universal solvent.
Right.
That's what I was taught in school. It's the universal solvent. And so when we're drinking water that's bottled in plastic, we are drinking a plastic tea. And it is what it is.
Yeah, unfortunately. So the first place I would start is in your kitchen, right? So if you're looking at your water, are you still drinking from plastic bottled water? When I go to Costco, I still see people buying crates and crates of Arrowhead in plastic, right? And they're just consuming those bottles at home. They're single use, those small bottles. If you can, please stop doing that. Because number one, it actually costs you more in the long run to buy that water. It costs less to install a water filter. And then, you can filter out the water. You have actually more reassurance that that water is clean. And studies have shown that tap water has less microplastic than bottled water. So that's number one. So think about your water source. Stop drinking from plastic bottled water. Invest in a water filter. And, I know everybody has different budgets. You don't have to get a fancy $1,000 reverse osmosis. What you have to do is just look up your tap water report. So you can do that by going to the EWG website. So that's the Environmental Working Group. If you type in EWG tap water database into Google, it'll pull up the website. And all you need to do is just put in your zip code and you'll pull up the contaminants in your water. And now the next thing you got to do is find a water filter that's been NSF certified to remove those contaminants. That's all you need to do. And for me, I don't even need a reverse osmosis. I just need an under sink filter that cost me $100.
It's a lot of good options, and it's never been as accessible, you know. And I remember when I got my first water filter when I was in college. So this was like, 20-ish years ago. And it was like a Brita filter. And I remember later on, after really starting to research it, this was like a year later. And then I actually read the package when I bought a new one. It says removes the taste and smell of chlorine, but it doesn't remove the chlorine. It was made by Clorox, actually. The brand Brita was made by Clorox. But it still did a job. It had the charcoal filter. It had certain filtering processes that remove a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so even something as simple and rudimentary as that, it's not going to make your water a complete blank slate, right? But it can do the job that's going to make that water far better for you than the average bottled water.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing is what you're putting your water into, right? A lot of people use plastic bottles. Now, they also wash that plastic bottle in a dishwasher. Heat, detergent, degrade that plastic. So when you take it out of that dishwasher, now you're filling water. Now all these chemicals are leaching into your water. So consider investing in a glass or stainless steel bottle instead. Yeah.
Awesome. And also, of course, when you purchase bottled water, if you find yourself in a situation, if you can get bottled water that's bottled in glass, or, there is like aluminum, but I know that that's sketchy as well.
Because water metal is going to cause rust, right? So there must be a layer. So for example, paper cups, paper's not waterproof. So it requires that epoxy layer, a layer of plastic between your water and your paper to make it waterproof. I think the same thing's happening with aluminum bottles.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So bottled in glass if you do, but now here's the thing. If you find yourself in a situation where water that's in a plastic water bottle is the only choice in that situation, maybe it's a flight or something.
Yeah.
We don't want to be super neurotic in 100%. Those situations because, again, we are resilient. And that leads us to what can we do to support our body's ability to detoxify, to eliminate some of these compounds, and not just plastics, but just the many toxicants, the thousands upon thousands, the billions of tons of toxicants that is affirmed to be released into our environment every year. What are some of the things that we can do to help our bodies to eliminate these things?
I love that question. And I love that point, actually, because during the LA fires, I got lots of questions from my followers who were worried about drinking from plastic bottled water. And I said to them, this is the one time you should not worry about that, because it's actually better to stay safe than to try and filter your water and you don't know what the contaminants are, during a fire. You don't know if your filter is actually working adequately. You could be actually consuming more carcinogens and things like that. So it's actually better in this scenario to drink from plastic bottled water. So there's nuances and there's always exceptions. I'm traveling today, came down to see you, and I would have no qualms drinking out of plastic bottled water on my way home on a flight if I can't get glass. And it's because I know I have natural detox organs inside of my body that can keep me healthy and eliminate the exposures. So I think the whole point is not to be super obsessed and, try to be 100% non-toxic, because that's not achievable. It's not even possible. Just do what you can. What we're trying to do is just to minimize that toxic load so that the organs in our bodies can do its job to eliminate. So inside our bodies, I actually think the gut is such a overlooked but super important detox organ. So a lot of people think straight away liver is like the biggest detox organ. And that's true. Liver is kind of our number one detoxifier of chemicals. What they do is to neutralize and break down the chemicals. But what they do then with that is to pass it to the gut to eliminate. How many people are constipated? They're not pooping every day. So your liver could be breaking down these toxins, but if you're not pooping, they're not coming out. And in fact, they are being reabsorbed. So you're just recirculating if you're not pooping. Pooping is actually the number one detox tool that anyone who comes to me who says, I want to take a liver supplement, I ask them, how many times do you poop a day? Sometimes they say once a week. No. Let's backtrack. Let's start with the gut first. Let's get your gut healthy. Let's get you pooping every day. Let's get your gut microbiome healthy, because guess what? The bacteria in our gut can break down BPA and some of these toxicants. So you never even absorb it if you have a healthy gut microbiome.
Listen, we've never talked about this before. We're thinking about it. We're getting rid of plastics and the compounds that come along with plastics via our poop. It's one of the primary ways that our body's eliminating waste, which we know this. Like this book, for many of us, this might be a revelation. And the importance of having healthy, consistent bowel movements is important for getting this crap out of your body. Yeah. So, okay, what do we do to make sure that we're having some good poops?
Yeah, so I feel like people are not eating enough fiber. 95% of Americans are deficient in fiber. So we should be getting at least 25 grams a day. Most people are getting around 10 to 15. So that's number one, get more plants and fiber into your diet. Now, a lot of people say, oh no, but it makes me bloated. Well, that's a gut microbiome issue, right? So if your gut microbiome is not healthy and you have dysbiosis, a lot of fiber can actually make you bloated and very uncomfortable. So what you need to do is then go slow. So if you suddenly eat a lot of, it's kind of like if you never lift weights and then you go into the gym and you try to lift 100 kilograms or pounds, you're not going to be able to do it. So go slow and introduce, let's say, 5 grams of fiber. So a tablespoon of beans a day. When you're comfortable, go up to 2 tablespoons. So do that slowly. And then you've got to be thinking about your gut microbiome all the time too, right? So what can we do there? Fermented foods. Kimchi has been shown to actually help break down BPA as well. Yeah. So fermented foods, I love that for detoxifying for gut health.
Yeah, bacteria is often the answer for a lot of things.
Yeah,
you know. So just that mention of being able to break down these compounds, fungi is really being studied now for its ability to break down plastics, even in our environment. And so again, but we have a microbiome. We have fungi in our bodies, in and on our bodies, that are again helping us if we help them. And so 100%. Fermented foods, make sure that we're eating a diversity of plants, diversity of plant inputs.
Yep.
There's so many varieties that our ancestors thrived on, tens of thousands of different foods. Now the average person is getting like 30 different foods
exactly.
a year.
And I mentioned 25 grams of fiber. When they look at our ancestors' poop, they estimate that they were eating around 100 grams a day. So even 25 grams, it's very little compared to what our ancestors did, right? Yeah. And speaking of plants, there was a study looking at 700 healthy adults. And the more plants they ate, the less cadmium, heavy metals, and pollutants they had in their bodies. So plants are very important for 2 reasons. Number one, the fiber itself can bind to these contaminants that you don't want. And when it binds to it, it doesn't actually get absorbed, right? So you're then eliminating it before it even gets absorbed. And number 2, plants are full of these antioxidants that help mitigate the harm. So we talked about inflammation and oxidative stress. Plants have antioxidants that fight the oxidative stress. So that's why plants are so important.
I love that, because we noted that these microplastics and nanoplastics are causing oxidative stress that can damage, destroy our mitochondria, really harm our cells. Getting those antioxidants in is another defense. 100%. And when I mentioned the average person is eating like 30 foods a year, different foods, and I'm not exaggerating, because it's the appearance of variety, right? the store, the shelves look like there's a lot of different stuff, but it's largely made from the same core ingredients.
Yes.
Corn, wheat, rice, soy, and all kinds of different formulations of that. Because that cereal aisle, it looks like so many different types of cereal. It's just like there's 50 varieties of cereal for me to choose from, but it's made from like the same 3 base ingredients and then a bunch of newly invented chemicals, right? And so we've got to be more proactive in eating, to be specific, a variety of real foods, a diversity of real foods.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
In addition to that, I would imagine making sure that we're adequately hydrated.
Oh yeah, that's really easily missed, right? A lot of people don't link hydration to pooping, but it's so important. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what about pooping position?
Oh, I know. Yeah. Like the modern day pooping position is not how we're designed to poop, actually. So I think that's why those, what are those called?
Squatty potties.
Yes. That is why it went viral, because it actually works to help people poop better.
Yeah. Little fun fact, we were the first show to feature, like major podcast to feature the squatty potty years ago. So yeah, big fan.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And I love kiwis for pooping. Studies have shown that kiwi can actually help relieve constipation and bloating from constipation as well. So
fruits are special. Again, there's something that we're attracted to our ancestors and ourselves. It's just something that is alluring about fruits. And they have the different flavor notes and things like that. It's really special. So I would encourage everybody to also, you can look up what is seasonal. What is available in your particular environment at certain times of year, and go for some of those different foods.
Yeah, that's so important.
So recently it was like
nutrient density.
Persimmons was like last month or whatever, which I'm not a big persimmons guy. I don't really, but because they were in season, I was like, let me get a couple persimmons,
Yeah.
And so I added
did you
them
like
in.
it?
Some types. There was like 3 different varieties that I got. One, I loved it.
Okay.
The other 2 was meh.
Is it the one that's long and soft?
No, the one that I ended up liking was just kind of like a medium size.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was, again, so many different varieties. And again, going to a farmer's market, right? Going to or joining your local CSAs. And there are so many different stores that are catering to this now. There's Whole Foods all over the place now. But they tend to get in some seasonal produce as well. So just something to be proactive about. So again, healthy elimination is going to help. What else can we do to help our bodies to detoxify some of these compounds?
So next we go to the liver, right? Once you're pooping, now we can talk about what we can do to help our liver. And nutrition is always first, because the process of detoxification by the liver is very energy requiring. So it needs a lot of ATP and a lot of nutrients, minerals, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, vitamin C, vitamin B, like lots of different vitamins and minerals. So if you're not eating that variety you're talking about, you're not going to be getting those minerals and, antioxidants and vitamins to help the liver do its job properly. So that's number one. And then we can go to look at specific foods that actually have been shown to upregulate liver detoxification enzymes. So these are enzymes that actually break down chemicals, harmful chemicals for us. So broccoli sprouts, it's got to be one of my favorites. And if you can't get broccoli sprouts, then broccoli. So cruciferous vegetables is this family of vegetables that are very high in sulfur that actually help the liver detox. So think broccoli, bok choy, cabbage, what else? Kale. These are cruciferous vegetables. But broccoli sprouts have been shown to contain 2 to 50 times more sulforaphane than broccoli itself by pound. So I sprout broccoli sprouts myself at home, and it's been shown to reduce risks of cancer, neuroinflammation, and I feel like it's all through helping the body eliminate these toxins that cause inflammation.
Yeah, during the LA fires recently, it's been a couple months now, but you sent me a message, you were checking in on me, and you reiterated, make sure you're getting extra broccoli sprouts in as well, and I appreciate that. So again, being mindful of caring for our major detoxification organs. And one of those is our skin, So what about sweating?
Oh, yeah.
Will that be helpful in eliminating some of these compounds?
So studies have shown that sweat can contain these endocrine disruptors, BPA, phthalates, even heavy metals as well. So we're sweating these things out. I love exercise, actually, because exercise has been shown to upregulate glutathione, which is a master detoxifier. So glutathione actually binds to these toxins and kind of ferry them out of the body and breaks it down in the liver. So upregulating glutathione in your liver through exercise is great. And you're sweating in the process, you're getting your lymphatics going. So a lot of people have sluggish lymphatic system. And think of lymphatic as kind of like the piping around your house. It's carrying waste, right, between your cells to your liver for detoxification. Now, if that lymphatic system is stagnant, now the waste cannot get to where it needs to be. So it starts to cause damage, inflammation, and things like that. So you want that lymphatic flowing, and exercise is a great way to do it.
Yeah. We have upwards of, somewhere around 4 times more lymph than we have blood, so that we have a lot of lymphatic fluid, and it's kind of like an extracellular waste management system in a way. And unlike the cardiovascular system, we have the heart and arteries that have this pumping action. Our lymphatic system it doesn't pump. It doesn't really move unless we move.
Exactly.
And that's why movement and exercise is so important.
Yeah.
And again, like how many people in our society, we this is a fact. We have the most sedentary society in the history of humanity. All right. And just a very rudimentary view of this, we had to move to survive. Now you don't. You could sit there and get anything you can imagine. And, whether this is food, you could ask somebody, bring it right to your door, put it right in your hand. You could find a mate on your phone, like the list goes on and on. All these human needs, we don't really have to move in order to do them. Our grocery shopping, the list goes on. And not to minimize some of these advantages, because some of these things can be very helpful. But if we're pulling out movement from our lives for convenience, this is where it comes in, where we have to find other ways to supplement that, because our genes expect us to move.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And movement is that kind of healthy stress, right? That then triggers your mitochondria to work harder and become better. Yeah.
Entertainment, just right there in the hand. Just anything you can imagine, we've got it right there.
Yeah.
And so, so exercise, movement, getting our sweat on is going to be helpful. Sauna is going to be helpful.
And you mentioned hydration. So we can't forget our kidneys. That's another major detox organ, right? And like you said, water is the best solvent. So you've got to be drinking clean water, and lots of it, because otherwise the toxins can't be carried out of the body. So BPA, for example, they're excreted mainly through the urine. So if your kidneys are not working optimally, then you can't excrete that as much.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier the influence that light can have on our mitochondria, which again, and I want everybody to understand this, please, because that is what really inspired this conversation today, is that scientists are now finding that these microplastics and nanoplastics are accumulating in the energy power plants of our cells themselves. They're accumulating in our mitochondria.
Yeah.
This is not a joke. This is not something for us to just dismiss anymore. We have to be proactive about this. And you are very likely, without a doubt, one of the foremost experts in the world in this subject matter of light therapy, red light therapy in particular. And so I want to talk more about this as a methodology, a means for us to be proactive in caring for. Again, we can't escape this. I'm going to say this once more. The largest intake of these microplastics and nanoplastics, the very air that we breathe, all right, through our lungs, through our water supply, through our food, through our skincare products, cleaning products, the list goes on and on and on. These things that many of us engage with on a daily basis. We've got to do something to be proactive in helping us to minimize our exposure, but also helping our bodies to detoxify. Yeah. Where does red light come in?
Oh, I love red light therapy. And I'm surprised I didn't learn about it in medical school, because it was already available. And there were already research studies on it, but nobody taught me anything about it. I only really opened my eyes to it when my dad was bedridden for weeks on end with this condition called piriformis syndrome. And his doctor just prescribed him more and more painkillers. And, I was starting to worry about addiction to opioids and things like that. So I flew home. I had a little red light therapy device with me at the time that I was using for wrinkles that I was trying to rejuvenate my skin with. I had him use it. Now, this is a very weak device, so he had to use it for hours to get any benefit. But after 2 weeks, he was up and walking. Now, of course, I did all the other stuff too, anti-inflammatory diet and other things. But red light therapy was actually a very key component. And when I saw that huge impact, I thought, I just have to look into this more. And then when I dug into the research, my mind was absolutely blown. There were thousands of studies. And this was all kind of triggered by NASA, actually, in the 1980s. So they were using light to help grow food in space for the astronauts. And they found that the astronauts who were using red light to grow food versus the other wavelengths, their wounds healed much faster. So then they started to do more research into red light therapy and the impact it has on our physiology. And that's where kind of it all started. And now we have studies showing that it can help minimize the appearance of wrinkles, fine lines, because it helps to support collagen production in the skin. It helps to boost circulation, blood flow to the skin as well. So you get that glow, natural glow. It can reduce inflammation. So things like pain relief. If you have joint aches, muscle recovery, if you work out a lot. So it's actually been shown to help with athletic performance as well. So a lot of athletes use it. And the reason why it can do this many things is because it's targeting the mitochondria, the powerhouse. When you give a cell more energy, it can do its job better. So in the skin, now the fibroblasts that makes collagen can make more collagen and elastin. It secretes growth hormones to actually, get the cells growing. And then, in the joint, it can start to bring in anti-inflammatory factors in to reduce inflammation in the joint, and that then can help with pain relief as well.
There's so many applications. And can you talk about a little bit about this, which I'm glad you brought this up, about your father inspiring you to create the Loom Box?
Yeah. So when I realized in the studies that a lot of the applications are very irradiance dependent. So irradiance is kind of like the power density, how powerful that light is. So think of a supplement you would take, let's say magnesium. You take a certain dose, right? So you need that with light too. So it's not just like, I lay there and, shine any old light on me. It may not do the thing that you want it to do. So in the studies, they've shown that the skin doesn't need very much light because it's on the surface. A little bit will do the trick. So a lot of devices target the skin. They're weak. Those are not going to penetrate very deep. It's not going to work for your joints or anything where you need that light to penetrate deep. So brain, joints, muscles, those weak lights really only work for superficial things. But if you want to help your joints, you want a powerful device. And that's why I was looking for one, after my father said he needed to do it for 2 hours a day. Now, who has 2 hours a day to do red light therapy? My dad did, but, most people don't, right? We have jobs to do and things to do. I was looking around for a portable device because that's how I use it. I don't really sit in front of big panels like, strip naked and do red light therapy. I'm not saying anything wrong with that. Athletes do that. I don't really need it. I do it on my skin. If I have back pain, I use it. So I want it portable so I can take it to the couch with me, in the car with me, in the bed with me. There wasn't a portable one that delivered high radiance. And in fact, there were people saying, we want weak devices because that's the power of you want those sun's kind of irradiance. I think that's well and good for certain purposes, right? But not for deep penetration. So I wanted to create something that was kind of like a Swiss Army knife. Because if you start with high irradiance, you can move that device further away to get your low irradiance because distance dilutes the irradiance, right? So I wanted something that was in a range for joints because then if I wanted to treat my skin, I just move that further away and I can treat my skin at the same time. I just don't believe people should be spending $400 on a helmet for their hair, a mask for their face, something for their neck, something for their hands, and then another panel. You could be spending thousands of dollars when you can just invest in one device that can do everything for you. And I couldn't find that thing, so I created it.
And you did, yes. And it's so amazing because your device is actually registered with the FDA as an effective treatment.
Yeah. Well, so here's the other thing that I had trouble with was getting the third-party testing from device companies. So they would list on their website something like irradiance over 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. What does over 100 mean? Is it 200? Is it 102? I don't know. And then when you ask them for testing report, they don't show me anything. So I wanted to third-party test my device so I know exactly what I'm getting at each distance. So I tested it at 1 centimeter away, and it was 125 milliwatts per centimeter square. So that's the perfect kind of irradiance for joints, muscles, anything deep. And then I tested it at 15 centimeters away as well. So that's the distance you want to use it for your skin, for rejuvenation I'm talking about. And that produced around 25. So that's the perfect irradiance for your skin.
Now, I shared this with you before about the skin health specifically because my wife would go do some skin treatments every now and then. Well, she has beautiful skin, but, she does this getting, different facials and things like that. But she shared that they would do red light treatments. And this is for years. And then when she was being nosy and saw me opening my Loom box and, I told her about what it is, she was like, oh, I have that treatment when I go for this expensive facial that she's doing.
Right.
And so, but since then, this has been a staple for my family, whether this is like prehab or rehab, helping accelerate recovery from injuries or, gameplay with my sons and competition and things like that. And also as a gift that I've given. Did I tell you this, that we got Michael Beckwith Loom box as well?
Yeah, I'm so he uses it all. He uses it all the time.
You were just sharing that you love him, and
wow.
he uses your Loom box.
It means so much to know that he has a Loom box in his home.
Yep. So it's a gift that I love to give, and there's so many applications. And right now, and this is as of this release of this episode right now, it is the birthday celebration of Loom box, and congratulations!
Oh, thank you so much.
And to celebrate the Loom box's birthday, you're doing something extremely, extremely special for everybody. And this is for a limited time as of the release of this episode, which is you're giving everybody 50% off of the Loom box. 50% off. Now, that it's amazing and a little crazy. And I understand and I appreciate why you're doing it. But this is something you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. But to celebrate this brand, to get it into more people's hands and into use for their families, especially now, I understand why you're doing it. And it has a trickle down effect. And so I really appreciate you doing that. And for everybody, if you go right now to theloombox.com/model, you could take advantage of this 50% off. And that is TheLumbbox.com/model, 50% off right now for a limited time. So this is about a week as of the release of this show.
Actually, it's less than a week.
Less than a week. 50% off. So take action on this now.
Ends on May 4th.
Ends on May 4th. So take advantage. Don't wait. And also, of course, if you're listening to this in the future, which many people are, it's okay, because I know that you're going to take care of us and still offer some money off
yes.
for everybody, a discount,
Yes.
but 50% off is just for this birthday celebration, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you so much. I just love the work you're doing and spotlighting really important issues. So it's an honor to be able to do that.
Amazing. So, of course, we've got the application with the red light, but Loombox is more than that. It has another feature as well. Can you talk about that?
So I wanted both near infrared and red at the same time. So when the box that I gave to my dad, it had one red bulb, one near infrared bulb, and it was all you kind of just spread apart. And you want that dense kind of you want the lights to be close together. So I wanted every single bulb to emit both wavelengths if you wanted it. Right now, if you're just doing your face for rejuvenation, you might only want to do red, and that's okay. You can do that. But if you just want to do your muscle, you can just do near infrared. So near infrared and red, the biggest difference between the two is that near infrared penetrates deeper than red. So if you want to target your muscle, your joints, a lot of people are actually using it over their liver now. Speaking of liver detoxification, so I actually read a study that showed, I think it was on something like 60 people, red light therapy actually improved non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in terms of the enzymes. And I've had customers now, this is totally anecdotal, so I'm not telling everybody like, hey, expect this. Obviously work with your doctor and, speak to them first. But we've had customers write to us and say their liver enzyme have improved after putting it over the liver as well. So, but, for that to happen, you need penetration, right? Where's the liver? It's not on the skin. It's deep. It's a deep organ. So you want penetration. That's when you want the near infrared.
Amazing, amazing. And again, it's all in one device. And there are many other applications. We're just touching on some of them. And since I have you here, because again, this is just kind of coming up for me right now when I ask you about this, in addition to our epidemics of chronic health issues that so many people are suffering unnecessarily. And obviously, we're very passionate collectively about doing something about this. But simultaneously, we have mental health epidemics right now. And this has a lot, as my friend, mentor, colleague, Dr. Daniel Amen states, is that, a big part about mental health is brain health.
Oh, yeah.
And so really caring for ourselves holistically and taking care, being mindful of how do we support our mental health. I talked about this over 10 years ago in the first iteration of my book, Sleep Smarter, and talking about light therapy and seasonal affective disorder and things like that. Applications, it had tons of science already published at the time, and now it's so much more. Yeah. But this is another place where we can consider red light therapy as well for mental health.
Oh, absolutely. There are actually studies on using red light therapy for things like anxiety and depression as well. And there was this really surprising study where they were treating people for back pain, people with depression. Their depression improved as well. So I think red light therapy can actually have systemic effects. So, you're shining the light on one spot doesn't mean you're just treating that spot, because that mitochondria now being healthy can send signals across the body to actually have effects, a distance away from that spot. And there was something really interesting during the pandemic, or slightly post-pandemic. Do you know MedCram?
I don't.
So this triple board certified doctor, very, very popular on YouTube, has millions of followers. He actually was talking nonstop about near infrared light for immune health. And he talked about this study where, because he's a ICU specialist and pulmonologist, he was really interested in the study because it was ICU patients with COVID, and they put everybody in a jacket. Some of the jackets were turned on. They had near-infrared lights, LED lights. Some were not turned on. So the patients who had the vest turned on and received near-infrared light therapy, they had better oxygen saturation, better lung function, and stayed on the ICU less.
This just speaks again to the many applications. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier about, our skin has these photoreceptors and it's sending data everywhere else in our bodies.
Yes.
It has to, because nothing in our bodies are happening in a vacuum. If something's going on with our skin, it's affecting our liver, our kidneys, our brain, and our body is just really acclimated throughout our evolution to utilize light, to utilize sound as well. There's, ultrasound, for example, therapies are known to be able to, whether it's kidney stones or even cancer tumors and other applications as well, speed and recovery, light, sound. These are things that I believe, because they're so Captain Obvious at this point, and non-invasive, safe, are going to be go-to treatments for many different conditions. And you're really leading the charge in this.
Oh,
truly.
Thank you. Yeah, there are just so many studies now on light. And, we weren't talking about this 10 years ago, circadian rhythm. Nobody was talking about that. But how important is it? It's so important for our metabolism, for our mood. Just think about the last time you're jet lagged. You felt lousy, no energy, brain fogged. That's circadian rhythm dysfunction, right? And what's the controller of that? It's light. And we're not getting light at the right time. We're getting the wrong type of light at the wrong time, right? And not enough of the right light at the right times. So we're not getting the daylight that we need to shut off melatonin. And then at night, we're inhibiting melatonin production with blue light from our devices and TV and artificial lighting. Melatonin is actually a very powerful antioxidant for mitochondria. So when our mitochondria works and we're accumulating stresses from the day, from the toxic soup that we're exposed to, at night when we sleep, when melatonin is produced, that's when a lot of the damage is reversed. So there's this mitochondria theory of aging. Of course, as we get older, our DNA is, being damaged, and that's part of aging. But a lot of the symptoms that we see as we get older is actually a result of our mitochondria declining. And studies have shown that with each decade, our mitochondria capacity goes down by about 8%. So, I'm 47, I'm almost 50. My mitochondria has gone down by 40% since I was born. If we want to thrive as we get older, we really have to look after our mitochondria.
Yes. When you said that you're almost 50, I almost just stopped the recording right there, because I didn't even know that. Amazing. Again, whatever you're doing is obviously working, but truly just your heart and your dedication. I know that it's not easy, to go through what you've gone through, for making sure that this incredible resource is not just accessible, but also is backed by science and also verified by multiple parties. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate that. And even you coming to hang out with me, and you came bearing gifts. You brought some gifts for me and my wife. And I appreciate
It's so
that.
fun to chat with you, because I feel so aligned with your mission. And it's just always fun to talk to you.
Yeah, same. We're going to continue this conversation. But again, I just appreciate you so much. Can you let people know where they can follow you? Just get more into your universe and more into your work.
Thank you so much. So I'm on Instagram. My handle there is @plateful.health. So that's plateful.health. That's my Instagram. So you can find short form content. I also have a Substack now, and that's the kind of more nuanced discussion around science, and I share studies and things like that. And you can find that through my Instagram link. And I have a website. It's www.platefulhealth.com. So platefulhealth.com.
Amazing. And we'll put everything for everyone in the show notes so they can get easy access. And of course, the link to Loombox, which again, it's happy birthday, Loombox. Go to theloombox.com/model. Again, that's TheLumebox.com/model. 50% off right now for a very, very limited time, less than a week. Take advantage. And again, I appreciate you for coming to hang out with us.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
They found this plastic-eating fungi. And ever since, in the last 15 years, top academic institutions have had groups of scientists discover more of these plastic-eating fungi.